CNBC TV 18's Women and Money series, Financial Quotient, powered by For Her, an investor education and awareness initiative of Aditya Birla Sun Life Mutual Fund.
Hello and welcome to CNBC TV 18's Women and Money series presents Financial Quotient powered by For Her, an investor education initiative of Aditya Birla Sun Life Mutual Fund. I'm Sumera Apti. Now, today we'll be busting some myths that are doing the rounds regarding estate planning and take a deep dive into the intricate details of estate planning and inheritance. And for that, we're joined by Shiny Sebastian, CEO at Affluence Financial Services India. Shiny, thank you very much for joining in to talk about this very, very important and often ignored topic. So, let me begin by first setting the context, which is why is estate planning so important, especially for women?
Over the last few years, we have a lot of women getting educated, joining the workforce, generating wealth, and that is why it is more and more important for them to plan for succession. In many families, we find, unfortunately, that the men go first, and the woman becomes a very critical bridge between the past and the future. Often, a lot of the family culture is imbibed with the next generation by the woman. So when you're looking at wealth, it is an embodiment of what the family culture is, what the family strength is, and it is her ability to soft sell the idea of this culture on to the next generation. So which is why estate planning is very essential, because you're imbibing the culture, the money, the wealth, and passing it on to the next generation.
Shiny, what exactly do we mean when we say estate planning?
Estate planning is basically your passing on what you have earned to the next generation. So you're looking at when somebody is passing wealth to the next generation, it is A, what you have made for yourself, and B, what you have also got from the previous generation. So you're actually acting as a bridge. Today, when I view wealth, I see it also is with stewardship. You're looking at taking forward taking together the family wealth and taking it to the next gen. So estate planning is, how do I pass my wealth to the next gen? Who are the family members who need more assistance, who don't? So this is what the whole process is about.
Shiny, is estate planning only for the wealthy?
Estate planning is not about the wealthy. It's perceived to be for the wealthy. But I think that anybody with money has to plan what exactly happens to the money after I'm gone. Say, for example, one of the most important things is that having worked for the money, you want to ensure that it goes to the next generation in the form that you imagined it. So, even if it is a mother leaving a small piece of property, or you're looking at mother passing some money, it is nice to tell a story of how she got the money and then how she expects the next generation to use it. So, it is not about the wealthy, it is for anybody, including the poor.
And what is the right time to actually undertake this exercise? Because a lot of people tend to do it only closer to retirement. Should younger and younger people start doing it perhaps as soon as you have a dependent?
I think whenever we acquire property, we have in mind that this is what I have today, and if I have it still left when I'm gone, it can be passed. So it need not even be at retirement time. It could be even when you're acquiring the property. Like say for example, if I look at wealth per se, if I have an X amount of money and I have a dream that I want to leave behind, we are actually considering ourselves stewards of the wealth.
Hmm.
And the steward is passing on the stewardship to the next generation. So you have an X amount of wealth with the number of stewards that you have. You are giving out bits and pieces of that. So you can actually start the grooming process as soon as you know. Like, say, for example, I think the best stories, we are passing ideas to the children. The best stories of wealth can be taught at mother's knee itself. So it doesn't have to be retirement. When I have an asset and I want to pass it on to the next generation, I'm actually preparing that person to receive it and to spend it in the form it was imagined. So there is no time for it. All of us, when we have a person we want to pass it on to, we will groom that person and know when it is ready and then pass it on.
Shiny, how true is the statement that people with only child don't need estate planning, or a lot of people tend to think that their heirs can maturely handle the estate. Do you still need written down wills, etc., even in these scenarios?
I think we all live in the hope that our children are very wise. And second is, when you're talking about estate planning, it may not necessarily be the children. If you are very wealthy, you would have many people outside. Like, say, for example, it could even be something like, passing on some part of your estate to somebody who served you well over the years. So the question here is, if I'm planning to pass on money to the next generation, it is about also teaching them to handle it. It's not to be assumed. So it, like I said, it's a grooming process. You have to guide the person step by step, saying this asset is for you. How will you pass it on? But having said that, I think as a mother and as somebody who's been handling, families for so many decades now, we realize that maturity doesn't come exactly with age. Maturity actually comes with experiences. So often, if we feel that there is a gap between what that person understands, I think it's very important to make a will and write it down very firmly with a lot of caveats put in so that there's absolute clarity in the asset being handed over. So, like I said, putting down a will, even better is having an executor for a will, so that, say, for example, there are times that the child may not be mature enough, or the person who is recipient it may not be mature enough. So you can bring in an executor who will guide that person through the process.
No, absolutely. And I love the point that you made on, grooming the person for those particular assets, because I had read the story of, somebody whose children were NRIs and they inherited chunks of property in India, which they found very, very difficult to actually dispose of. Perhaps in that case, had they been given financial assets, they would have been in a much better position to handle it. But Shiny, is it enough to just create nominees for your investment, or do you necessarily need a plan as such?
I think you definitely need a plan, because when you're looking at it is the plan that you're laying out. Let's say, for example, I'm talking about somebody at my age. We are looking at me till I die and the wealth to live beyond me. So what you're saying is, I'd like to believe that most people generating wealth, there is a wisdom, right? You're looking at the sacrifices you make. So we'd like to believe that when we are not there anymore, it is left behind in the hands of people who are mature, and the will, in a sense, would help the guidance process. So, say for example, even if I'm giving it to a nominee, the nominee is allowed to hold on behalf maybe of other people. It is not directly for that person's use. So a combination of your nomination and the will helps you create that bridge.
Shiny, which is the best way to actually do this? Is the a will the right way to go? Should the will be registered, or should a person look at forming a trust, which is the most optimum estate plan?
I think a will is essential for everybody. Generating of a trust is also a function of the assets available. If the assets being left behind are very simple, then it's all right. You don't need very complicated process. You just need to write down the will and mention the executors, define the asset, and simply pass it on. But when it comes to, like, say, for example, you have real estate, and like you mentioned earlier, if you have estates which you're not very sure the person who's handed over can manage well, I think maintaining a trust and having other people help them manage that will really come in handy. There could be another issue. Let's say, for example, the family has members who are disabled. The family wealth also needs to be passed on to other people. Like, say, for example, you have people who have served the family well, or there are other members who could be distant relative. You want to leave assets. I think the trust lays down everything. The trust deed would lay down so that there is no ambiguity. I think one of the saddest thing about not leaving a will or any kind of inheritance plan is that all the people that you love fighting each other for the assets that you left behind. If you define it well, there is no ambiguity there. This also helps them minimize taxes, your court costs, your legal fees. All of this gets taken care of. And see, the idea is to have other people to help you think through, define it, and leave it in such a way that as you go along, there is no dispute between your heirs in any form.
Yeah, I remember reading somewhere that it takes on an average 7 years to resolve a property dispute in India. So, I mean, it's definitely not something which is ideal, in a family situation. Shiny, what are the don'ts? I mean, we've discussed a lot of the do's. What are the don'ts of estate planning?
I think one thing you said about is ambiguity. If there is clarity, we should not do. Second is one doesn't assume that it is a plan forever. It is something that you might want to revise as you go along. Say, for example, if there is somebody whom you have written an asset in the will, and then circumstances are changed after as time progresses, you don't then have to keep the same asset in favor of this person. So a necessary revision. So the process is not static. I think we are free to assign and reassign assets to our different beneficiaries, our different people whom we want to ensure that they have. So on a don't, I think it's more about the do's being done right than the don'ts.
Well, fair enough. And just one final question is that, when people are writing a will, which you mentioned is something, an exercise that, just about everybody should undertake, right? Should this be written through a lawyer? Can a simple handwritten will at home suffice? And does it need to necessarily be registered?
A handwritten will is good enough. It has to be basically witnessed by two people. Technically, that's okay. But we normally suggest that, like in any other things, it is good to have good advice. Often the perspective, like say, for example, if you're speaking to a qualified will writer or you're speaking to a good lawyer, you're not only you're drawing into their expertise. Like say, you have a lawyer you're working with who has been doing this for a long time. He can also help you prevent what could be, like I said, the dangerous areas. So while I say, okay, these are my assets, I write it down, there are a lot of caveats in passing on assets. And I think having access to a good will writer or somebody like this, though it is not essential, I think it's very important. Second is if you have a lot of estate property, it is important to register it because then it defines, see, all these, if the law, if every aspect of the will is defined without contested by the beneficiaries and followed through, then we don't have any issue. But often, when there is property involved, when there is a will written and the will is read out and the executors come in, there's a pretty good chance that there is dispute, right? Dispute of distribution. Somebody is feeling that he is unfairly, treated in the will. That's the point that I think it would really help to have it registered. You're, locking it in.
Shiny, thank you so much for joining in to talk about estate planning and the ways in which inheritance planning can be done right. So, thank you very, very much. And for everybody who's been listening in, I hope you have found a lot of takeaways from this. So, thank you very much for watching. Stay safe.
CNBC TV 18's Women and Money series, Financial Quotient, powered by For Her, an investor education and awareness initiative of Aditya Birla Sun Life Mutual Fund. Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.